Hello, everyone. I am Anawat Sislimsak, Product Marketing Manager here at Veritas, also your moderator for this session. This session, we're going to go around data protection from edge to core to cloud. And with us, we have two great speakers. We have Chris Morrow, Product Manager, and Tony Davids, National Architect, right at the end. All right, guys, take it away.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, Anawat. And we're looking forward to speaking with everybody today. If we start off with our agenda slide, what we're going to do is talk about a few things today and really look at a couple of different reasons why our customers leverage, say, for example, multiple clouds. Why is that important? I'm going to introduce NetBackup Cloudpoint to those who are not aware at a high level. And then we're going to talk about what's net new in NetBackup Cloudpoint in 9.0. We've got some great demos that have been given by Tony here today. So on the next slide, first of all, why do our customers, and why does essentially everybody leverage a multi-cloud strategy? Okay, and there are various different reasons here. I'm not going to go into all of them, but at the same time, there are some that are very common. First of all, at the top of everybody's list, of course, is regulatory requirements. Oftentimes, there are data sovereignty requirements in a given region, which may drive the selection of a given cloud solution. It may also drive the use of, say, for example, a private cloud solution with something like Azure Stack. There could also be a regulation that requires the existence of a certain type of data in multiple geographic locations that are separate from each other. This occurs, say, for example, in financial services. There are also times when speeds and feeds come into play. So you may have an application that requires a certain bandwidth, a certain access to data at a certain speed, and therefore you're driven to use a DC that is local or a region that is local. And therefore you're looking at cloud providers, whether they be public, again, or maybe perhaps using a private cloud to provide that access to be able to deliver your solution to your internal customers to meet your SLAs. Also, we have the concept of data availability. A lot of different customers will leverage either multiple clouds, multiple regions within a given cloud, multiple zones within a given cloud, perhaps other, various different cloud solutions to replicate data between different areas, therefore increasing the availability of a given data set in the event an issue occurs. This also allows the customer to have more control in the event, say, for example, a particular provider is having an issue in a particular region. There are times when a provider will state, we don't have, or our SLA, I should say, is dependent on the number of services that are unavailable, or a certain percentage of the data is unavailable before they call a DR event. Well, that does not necessarily dovetail into the SLA for the customer providing information to their customers or individual applications to their customer, and therefore they want to call their own DR event and switch over to a different region that has the data replicated there. Or perhaps to a backup and restore that backup in a given region in order to make sure that that application continues to function while the provider is actually addressing the issue. Another reason why people choose different clouds, there are oftentimes purpose-built applications that may leverage specialized cloud services. So there are a lot of folks building cloud-native applications that are leveraging, say, for example, AI and ML, so machine learning and artificial intelligence. And those are in specific areas only available for specific cloud vendors or specific types. Customers may choose to use one cloud for infrastructure as a service reasons, and then another for various different platform as a service reasons. Maybe they have a specific platform as a service that they want to leverage, but it's not offered in their other cloud. So there are various different reasons, and we could continue on down the list, but there are various different reasons why you may actually have a multiple cloud strategy within your environment. And if you have a multiple cloud strategy, it actually also requires a multiple cloud data protection strategy. So moving to the next slide, what is NetBackup Cloudpoint? Some of you may be familiar with the previous version of Cloudpoint, and that version was a standalone version. This is actually part of NetBackup proper as of 8.3. So what does that mean? It uses all the same roles-based administration, all the central management capabilities, central management of policies, reporting, compliance, licensing, etc., all rolled up into the NetBackup platform. You can deploy and manage your Cloudpoint services through NetBackup. It supports replication. There are various different REST-based APIs that are available. We support, of course, multiple clouds, as we talked about before, between AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform. We also have Azure Stack, and we're expanding that support in Cloudpoint in coming versions as well. And we'll continue to add cloud providers as our customers raise the need. We have unified logging through this. Also, single file recovery is also supported by Cloudpoint. We support various different workloads on Windows, Linux file systems, SQL Server, MongoDB, and many others. And we're also available in the marketplace, Microsoft Azure, AWS, as well as Google Cloud. So it's that concept of having a central location to be able to protect multiple cloud solutions, manage snapshots, full backups, retention of those, and maintain the compliance all within the same platform.
Yeah, and Chris, that's going to be part of the demo. We actually have all three, AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform, all on the demo instance. And I do on a demo instance that I use for customers. It's been picking up. You know, at first it was a lot of AWS, then Azure has become extremely popular, and now we're seeing a lot more GCP inquiries from our customers.
And again, going kind of that back to the multi-cloud strategy that a lot of folks have, and some of that's driven by regional requirements. Like I said, we see a lot of requests coming out of EMEA for Google Cloud Platform. We had a lot of folks initially lift and shift to Amazon Web Services, AWS. And of course, Microsoft Azure, people are leveraging various different things within that platform, not only infrastructure as a service, but also, you know, SQL, platform as a service, et cetera. And we're seeing those requests come in more often every day. But having that centralized view and not having to hop from screen to screen, report from report, is where a lot of value comes in, where Cloudpoint is now part of NetBackup. And also, just to mention the licensing model, it is included as part of NetBackup. So that's also key as well. I'm going to talk about a few of the updates, if we go to the next slide, that we have as part of 9.0 with NetBackup. And of course, like I said, we're consistently adding to these. I'm going to point out some specific updates that were really important. So first of all, around kind of cost savings. We have integration with Microsoft Azure today. We do snapshots in 8.3. With 9.0, we've changed that to be incremental snapshots. So previously, we kept essentially the entire snapshot, and it was costly as far as a storage cost on your Azure cloud storage. So as of 9.0, we've introduced incremental snapshots in Cloudpoint. They're going to be Azure managed disks, will be supported incremental snapshots by default. Again, we're only snapping the changes. We're going to be doing full snapshots, are going to use premium disks based on the parent disk settings. The incrementals are not dependent on each other. So if you delete one snapshot, it does not affect the others. And we can actually support a total of 200 incremental snapshots being created per disk. And this significantly reduced the cost associated with that footprint that you're keeping up on Azure for snapshots. So if we go to the next slide. We're actually also adding support for encrypted volumes for Azure, as well as Google Cloud Platform. We have this as part of AWS today. But of course, as cloud, we're always looking to increase security in the cloud. The customers, of course, looking to bring their own keys or leverage key stores that are associated with the various different providers. So on the Azure side, we've added support for encrypted volumes. So the data on the disk can be encrypted and then require keys to access. This is kind of optional. This isn't something you have to enable by default. It does use 256-bit AES encryption. And there are two different types which Azure supports today. They have their platform managed key, which is essentially owned and managed by that Azure Key Vault. And then they have the customer managed key, which the customers own and manage their own key in their own key store. We also have the concept or actually the support for Google Cloud Platform encrypted volumes as well. We have a data encryption key called a DEC on the Google Cloud Platform side. And they're encrypted with the key encryption key, which is a KEK. And customers can then choose a KMS for managing those KEKs. And Google has their own managed PMK. Customers can use their CMK. And at this particular point, there are various different things that are not supported with the API, but that's something that we're going to be looking at going forward. So next slide. All right, we're going to talk about Amazon at this particular point and some performance enhancements around how we do the snapshots in Amazon Cloud. So previously, we required the AMI to create a snapshot, which essentially we based it off of the Amazon machine image itself. So when you snap an AMI, you have to quiesce all the workloads. And this could take up to 24 hours in some case. That was actually the SLA, while those snapshots get created. So at this particular point, this update is going to snapshot the disks versus the entire AMI VM. So the workloads on the disk can be quiesced until that snapshot is initiated, but it's resumed before the snapshot is complete. So at that point in time, you've got the disk snap. You're continuing on the snapshot for the application. And the restores will use an AMI that gets created, a temporary AMI, using that disk snapshot. And then that instance itself is then launched from that AMI, that temporary AMI. Then we clean it up. So we retrieve the information from where the data was actually stored. We create that AMI and register the AMI based off the initial disk snapshot. And then we launch the instance off that new AMI and we clean up the staged AMI.
Yeah, and Chris, I've noticed myself in taking snapshots manually from the console, you can see that it essentially stuns the VM. If you're, used to the VMware sort of world, you can see that, and it kind of freezes it for a bit. So this is really nice. It doesn't do that, and it's offered us another capability that those familiar with AWS know that you can't replicate cross-account, which we have the ability to do. You can only do it with volumes. You can't do it with an AMI. Now with this functionality, you can take an instance level snapshot and then replicate it across to a cross account for safety to get it out of that account.
No, excellent point. And the other thing is too is the speed at which we're able to do these snapshots now is significantly increased, and the time to complete is reduced. So.
Yeah, and that SLA you talked about is from AWS. That's where they've said, it could take up to that amount of time. That's not a function of anything we do. It's just a function of how long it might take on the platform.
True, very true. So, we've talked about various different things that we've added, talked about multi-cloud. What I'd like to do is show a demo of some of these things. And if we could move forward into that demo, that'd be great. And like I said, Tony's recorded some excellent demos here, and you can see these new functions in action.
An overview of NetBackup 9.0, cloud native data protection for AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform. We're also going to show you some of the behind-the-scenes improvements in 9.0 that are going to save you money and mitigate your risk. First off, we're logged into the NetBackup web user interface, all RESTful API driven. After having set up NetBackup and connecting it to our 3 NetBackup Cloudpoint servers in Azure, GCP, and AWS, as you can see here on the screen, we set up a provider in each of those, which in the case of Azure is a subscription, GCP is a project, and AWS is an account. After doing so, it's going to go out and discover all the virtual machines and volumes associated with each of those accounts, subscriptions, or projects. It'll also discover the volumes natively. Now, the first 3 items are the first 2 are Red Hat clients, and the third one is a Windows client. The first one having MongoDB running in the virtual machine, and the third one having Microsoft SQL Server running in the virtual machine. We have these protected by our protection plans within NetBackup in our NetBackup 9.0 web user interface. And you can also see when their last successful backup is. The application column shows the 4 different states that are available. Not connected means we can take a crash consistent snapshot. Connected means that we can take a file system consistent snapshot with granular file recovery, and configured means we've discovered the applications within the virtual machine that we can get a consistent application consistent snapshot of. Those being either MongoDB, Microsoft SQL Server, or Oracle. So let's take a look of what we can do here with these different clients. So if I click on our client here and drill in, I'll be able to see the protection plan that was used as we saw in the previous screen. So you can see the details about it. I can do a backup now, I can remove that protection, or I can add additional protection on it. We can also see our recovery points for that virtual machine. And as our recovery points come up, you can see there's 4 different recovery points, and here are the options for our recoveries. I can restore it to the original location, which means in the same subnet, cloning the machine with a new IP address. Alternate location means in a different subnet, which could be in the same, in this case, AWS availability zone, or in a different availability zone, which in a different subnet. Rollback restore on top of itself, be careful there. Restore files and folders gives you our granular file and folder recovery for Red Hat Linux and Windows. And of course, restore any of the volumes. You can do that with any of our backup conditions or our backup capabilities. So moving over to those discovered applications I talked about, we have 2 that we've discovered. We discovered that MongoDB database here at the instance level, so we can see that in that MongoDB machine, or that Mongo machine. It's actually MongoDB. So we are protecting at the database instance level, so we're taking a snapshot here with this protection plan, and you can recover either into the same machine or an alternate machine. Microsoft SQL Server, we've discovered the instance level, and we're taking snapshots at the instance level. We've also got all 4 databases that are there, and we're taking snapshots of the DS2 database there. So functionality-wise, that's a quick overview of what we can do. Now to go on to the behind-the-scenes things that we've added in NetBackup 9.0. First off, as was mentioned, we have snapshots on Azure are now incremental. Azure in 2020 released the ability to do incremental snapshots. Here we have the SQL 2019 machine. It has a operating system disk, a data disk, and a log disk for the database. Those 3 volumes are being snapshotted, and they're all incremental. You can do restores from any one of the machine snapshots here and get an application consistent recovery without having to apply anything. It's just as if it were a full. This is going to save you money. Snapshots typically about 50% of the cost of a storage, primary storage, typically of the SSD type standards. So next up, we added the ability to use customer managed keys for Google Cloud Platform and for Azure also, having already supported on AWS. And you can see this machine, the MongoDB machine, has 3 disks on it: MongoDB, Disk 2, and Disk 3. MongoDB and Disk 2 are both Google managed keys, and the third disk, Disk 3, is a customer managed key. So when we took our snapshots, here's the listing of our snapshots here. We've got a number of them protected. You can see the groups of 3 with the operating system disk and Disk 2 and Disk 3 each time for those protection points here. If we drill into the snapshot details, we can see that for the operating system disk, the MongoDB, it is a Google managed key. It's retained that capability, and you can also mix and match those. The restore will also maintain that same key that was on the original disk and then on the snapshot and then in the restore. Here's the Disk 2. It's retained its Google managed key. And then finally, our Disk 3, which had the customer manage, our new support, it retained that, and it will retain that when you do the restore. Here, for AWS, one of the new behind-the-scenes things that we've added, which will save you cost in the fact that it's not going to be producing an AMI when you're doing an EC2 instance level snapshot. So this particular client, AWS client, we're taking snapshots of. Sorry, I meant to be on the snapshots one. But here we are. The snapshots in this case, you can see there's 4 recovery points here for that machine. There's just a single volume. And when we jump over now to the other one and list the AMIs, these AMIs were for another project and another demonstration. They were manually generated, so there are no AMIs. Previously, you would have seen AMIs for that AWS client machine to go along with those snapshots, so it's going to save you time. Also allow you to replicate it across account, since you can only replicate snapshots and volumes cross account. You can't replicate AMIs, so then you'll be able to recover those in a different account on AWS, one of our other capabilities I didn't mention before. So thank you very much. That was a quick overview of the NetBackup 9.0 cloud native functionality for the AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud platforms, as well as the behind the scenes improvements in NetBackup 9.0.
So at this point, thank you very much, Tony, for the demo. What we'd like to do is make sure that we have, I believe, some time for questions. But first, I want to say thank you very much for everybody in attendance and appreciate your time. And you know what? I believe we have some questions that may be.
Yes, looking at the questions now. And so the first question is, are you using multi-cloud for different purposes? And if so, what are they?
Sorry, Anna, I didn't catch the first part. Are you using what?
Multi-cloud for different purposes? And if so, what are they?
So here at Veritas, of course, we're using multiple clouds, not only to prove out on our own software, but of course, we're using different SaaS solutions to support various different business functions. We're also using various different clouds for, say, for example, again, infrastructure as a service, where we've taken some things out of the data center. We've also using different clouds to go out and be able to perform certain functions and build some cloud native apps internally to be able to perform business functions. So I don't know if that's answers the question that was raised, but I think that's at least a little bit of detail there.
Great, thanks, Chris. We have one more question here. So what are the challenges with data protections in the cloud? You guys can clarify that for some of the viewers.
Tony, I don't know if you want to take a swing at that one.
Sure. Yeah. The most common thing I hear is, people have either done a lift and shift or, a refactoring of the applications and put them in the cloud. And during that, usually, they've they've gotten the assistance or the help from someone who's cloud, familiar. And then when they implemented the data protection, when they get to the cloud, they've used the native methods, but the challenge is that it's usually sort of a separated environment like that. I mean, in AWS, it's accounts, in Azure, it's subscriptions, and GCP, it's projects. So everything they look at, and they try and look at in a holistic sort of way, they can't look across all of those items easily. So that's one thing that's commonly coming from most of our customers. They've gone down that path already, just use the native tools, and they can't get a good overall look at what their data protection is, either for regulatory requirements, auditing requirements, or compliance requirements. That's a really big challenge.
That's great. So having it all in one package is like a good plus, right?
It is. And
awesome.
Operationally too, on top of that, besides all of those, regulatory compliance and audit requirements, it just makes, it's really exciting for them to say, oh, I can do everything the same way as I was doing it before for my on-premises environment, my virtualization there, and my Hyper-V or VMware or whatever they may have. And they can continue doing it, reporting wise, operationally, and it makes it all much better. So they don't have to do different things depending on where they are to recover.
Great.
It allows them to understand, retention works the same way here as it does there. Right? So they can really understand, and they already know how these functions work and how the policies are managed and what they can get out of the reporting. So therefore, when they're adding another provider or adding another cloud into their infrastructure, that's not something they really have to worry about. So they can actually leverage what exists today. That's part of it. It makes it easy, right? And they have a great protection strategy out of the gate. And as we start adding more features and functions around cloud intelligent policies, et cetera, and like you said, auto discovery or something else that we do, we're finding things for you in your instance, and therefore we can make sure that they get protected, as opposed to you having to go out and look for things. As we all know, when you give access to a subscription or you give access to an account, people will create things if they have access to do so. And sometimes those things don't get protected. And when there's a failure or an issue or something that should have been protected for compliance or retention reasons, and it wasn't, everybody turns around and looks at, okay, what's our protection strategy and who runs it? And everybody goes back and looks for that individual who's responsible for it. Therefore, if they have the same set of tools and they have the ability to do auto discovery, et cetera, they're protecting themselves and they're protecting their corporation.
Excellent. So we do have one more question before we got to go here. Where is the storage for cloud backups, on-premise or on cloud? Which is better considering cost and recovery time?
Very good question. So we're supporting the native methods, and the data is stored within the cloud. So when we're doing our cloud native snapshots across any one of the three major clouds, it's being stored there. There are some upsides and downsides to trying to move that elsewhere, either to another cloud or to on premises. You're going to experience some extraction costs there, and it'll depend on the volume of data that you're going to do that with, and it's also going to require you to have a little larger bandwidth too, in order to be able to be taking that data out and moving it elsewhere.
Sounds good.
Moving it within availability zones or zones within those clouds, there's costs there too.
Sounds good. Thanks for answering that question. We are actually out of time, so I want to thank both our speakers for giving up their time and discussing this topic with us. Please go to veritas.com to find more information, or Vox. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and if you want further information, you can look for us on Connect too, or look us up in the speaker list, and also reach out to your account teams, and we could do a deeper dive and a longer presentation. This was really quick.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.